Hello, everybody, and welcome to Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and I thought it would be fitting to do a historical breakdown of the Gettysburg Address. Many Americans had to learn to recite this 272-word speech verbatim in elementary school. But why is it so important? Why does it get so much attention? If you've wondered that, this is the video for you. I will go through the address and add context to those statements and help people comprehend what Abraham Lincoln means in this speech. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. This is a very telling statement in Abraham Lincoln's political beliefs. He had a great admiration for the Declaration of Independence. Now, did Lincoln believe that when the statement all men are created equal was written, that the country believed that all races were equal? Of course not, but Lincoln did believe that that statement was something to aspire to, something to attain at a later date. The country was founded on attaining more freedoms and a representative government, and until all people attained equality, the country was not complete in that sense. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. Lincoln believed that when the South seceded and took up arms against the United States, they were attacking the very institutions that the country was founded upon. As one of my professors in my undergrad told me, there is no self-destruct button in the Constitution. The Civil War tested whether a representative government/democratic republic could survive. If the South won, that would prove that the government set up by the founders was a failure. In many of the southern states' ordinances of secession, they listed Abraham Lincoln's election to the presidency and his attack on slavery as the reason they left the Union. Lincoln was appalled at this. The founders had installed a way for you to get rid of a president you didn't like. It's called an election. Just because you don't like the results of an election does not mean that you can take your ball and go home. What's the point of a country if that is the case? We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. The Civil War is arguably the most transformative event in American history. Not only does it result in the complete overthrow of the South's social hierarchy by freeing African Americans from bondage and providing them with rights they previously did not have, but it also changed how the government operated, particularly with the military. We would get an expanded pension system for veterans, health care as it relates to prosthetic arms and legs, and in this case, set up national cemeteries. The huge numbers of casualties that emerged because of the war led to mass burials near the battlefield sites. The government stepped in and put these cemeteries under their jurisdiction. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. I feel the same way when I visit battlefields and cemeteries. Every place has a solemn spirit about it. Standing in locations like the Hornet's Nest, Devil's Den, the Slaughter Pens, or Snodgrass Hill, knowing what occurred there humbles me every time. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. How incredibly wrong could Lincoln have been in this statement? His speech is one of the most quoted and famous speeches in American history. Edward Everett, a famed politician and one of, if not the greatest orators in American history, spoke for 2 hours comparing Gettysburg to battles of antiquity, but it would be Lincoln's 2-minute speech that captured the importance of the Civil War for the preservation of the Union and for a new kind of freedom in the United States. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion. That great task is simply not finishing the war itself, although that is a major part of the great task, but is the transformation of the nation. We will never be the same after the war is over, and Lincoln knew that. Rapid changes had already occurred, and the future would not be the same. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth. In this last statement, he makes mention of a new birth of freedom. That new birth is that transformation of the nation. It will be born again after being baptized in fire and blood. The freedom he mentions is the new freedoms extended to those who had long been without them. For every American, this would be a new country. Although it would still have its problems, the ability to survive a civil war means that it is able to survive anything. The last statement also refers back to the beginning of the speech. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people is popular government that will only become stronger through this new birth of freedom. There have been many myths about the Gettysburg Address, but there is one in particular that I would like to address here. It's said that Lincoln wrote the speech on the back of an envelope on the train taking him to Gettysburg. That is entirely false. He never liked to speak off the cuff as president, because he knew that a president's statements were powerful, so he wanted time to think and prepare for such orations. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this provided insight into the Gettysburg Address and its author. Thank you all again, and have a great day.
Historian, historian, where do you roam? Historian, historian, far, far from home. Have history will travel reads the card of a man, a professor with knowledge in the hard land. To educate the world is his mission. A professor of fortune is a man called historian. Historian.